For the past couple of years, I have been actively developing my spirituality. And this is something that I have been doing as someone who doesn't really believe in anything. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything paranormal or supernatural. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe that the universe has a plan for me. I don't believe in karma. I don't believe in basically any of the things that people usually associate with spirituality. And yet I've built for myself and am still developing this sense of spirituality that gives me a grounding in the world, that gives me a sense of purpose and resilience, and that has brought a lot of meaning and dimension to my life. I wanted to make this video today because when I was starting this journey of exploring my spirituality as someone who's quite naturally skeptical, I found a lot of resources of people willing to give me answers, and not as many of people who wanted me to find answers for myself and explore things in my own way, coming to my own conclusions that were grounded in something that I really truly believed in. So I wanted to make this as a sort of step-by-step guide if you are setting out on a similar sort of exploration for yourself and you don't know where to begin. This video will be in 3 parts. I'm going to look into what spirituality is, why it's been so important to me, and why I think developing your spirituality is a worthwhile goal to set for yourself. And thirdly, we'll get into the how-to of how to start to look into this. So hi, I'm Lucy. This is a new channel. I make content about environmentalism, seasonal celebrations, and connecting with nature. So if that's something that you're interested in exploring, come and subscribe. So a little disclaimer before we start. I'm pitching this video at people who don't identify as having a belief system or who consider themselves atheist in some way. That is not to say that I have anything against people who hold a faith position or come from a religious background. I come from a religious background myself. My personal belief is that there are some things in life that we just don't know the answers to around things like God and an afterlife. And so if someone comes to a different conclusion than me on whether these things exist, who am I to be the one to say that's not true? I also hope that if you are watching this and you do have a faith, maybe what I'm talking about today will give you some food for thought and something to explore and think about with your own faith journey as well. The second disclaimer is I am not an expert in any way. This is just stuff that I have been exploring and thinking a lot about and stuff that has worked for me. You know, a spiritual path is a lifelong journey, and I will continue to develop and learn and all of those things, but in terms of establishing myself a good base from which to go out and do those things, I think I can say I've done that for myself, and I'm hoping that I can help you to do that as well. So what is spirituality? I think spirituality can be a really confusing term. It's a little bit of a nothing burger. People use it in all sorts of different ways. And it can also be really hard to pin down what other people are trying to say when they say spirituality. People can be talking about a certain belief system, whether that's New Age or that's associated with a religion. People can be talking about a search for meaning. People can be talking about the experiences that they've had that they perceive to be spiritual. And I'll put some definitions up on the screen here so you can see how different dictionaries have defined this in different ways. For me, there are 3 core concepts that define spirituality. The first is a sense of connection to something bigger than yourself, and also this sense that there is something beyond the physical. As someone who is a materialist, this is something I like to think about in terms of my connections to others and the feelings that I experience which are not necessarily tangible, such as love and a sense of connection. These are kind of amorphous, invisible things that I experience as real, but they're not necessarily physical. And other people might experience this as a sense of their connection with God, or just a sense that there is something real, supernatural out there that is bigger than the human experience. The second dimension is a search for meaning. As humans, we're plopped on this planet with our great big brains that are capable of coming up with all different ideas, and we have so many questions about the world beyond the scope of our knowledge. And we love to ask why things matter and why things exist. And that is something that spirituality is interested in. The third dimension is how should we live? And this is concerned with both our values, what do we hold to be morally true, and how should we act in accordance with those values, And also this involves the ritual and the ceremony and the expression of our spirituality in the world. And so when we're looking to explore our spirituality, the 3 buckets that we're looking to fill are our sense of connection, our search for purpose and meaning and our kind of personal conclusions in that area, and our value system and how we want to express and live in the world. So why spirituality? Why set these goals for yourself? Why explore it? And for this section, I'm just going to go super personal and tell you about why spirituality was something important for me to explore, so you can see if this resonates with you. Firstly, I'm really interested in what it means to be human. I like to think of myself in the terms of this grand anthropological project of all of human history. And throughout human history, humans have come up with stories and they have expressed themselves in religious ways and they have expressed themselves in spiritual ways. So I knew that this was something that for most humans, they have found something meaningful and important in spirituality. So if I'm interested in exploring all the good parts of what it means to be human, I don't want to be cut off from this part of my life. The second reason is that I think investing in spirituality builds character. When I've met people in my life who I consider to be really strong in their spirituality, they just move through the world differently. They are so humble, they're so generous with others. They have a kind of gentle way of talking and listening to people. They're able to show up in this really beautiful way for the people in their lives. I've known a number of people who just walk with this really light and sure-footed stead through life. And honestly, I think that it's really beautiful the way they show up and they're role models for me. That's how I'd want to be in the world. The third reason is the most personal of all. I think that building a sense of spirituality is a way of building resilience. When I started my spiritual journey, I based it all around nature because nature is an access point for me, something that I can really tap into and feel a sense of wonder and calm and joy. It makes me feel really connected. And then I went to visit a relative in hospital. I think hospitals are amazing places. I think the people that work in hospitals are amazing and they do so much brilliant work. But the ward was several stories up. It was kind of a hot room and we were really far from a window, and the one window in the ward you couldn't really open. And I couldn't see any nature in that ward. I couldn't see any trees. I could barely see the sky. And, you know, that's something I would like to see change. But I realised that day that I needed something that could carry me into those spaces where my access points are not available. I know when people have a sense of faith in God, that faith is kind of like a bedrock, that when something really hard happens in their lives, they can go, well, I've got this bedrock, which is my faith in God. It's like they have this solid core that is unsquashable no matter the circumstances that are closing in on them. And when you don't have that, you have to build that for yourself. We're all going to have to face really scary things in this life. We're all eventually going to have to face death. And I want to be a really emotionally resilient person when I get to those situations in my life. We also know that practices that are usually considered spiritual practices like mindfulness or meditation have really protective benefits for our well-being. And so from what I think we know of human experience so far, spirituality is something that's really helpful to develop. And why wouldn't I want to give myself that help? Okay, so we've looked at the what, we've looked at the why, and now we're going to get to the how. How do you start to explore your spirituality? I'm going to run through a lot of questions to ask yourself in the next section, so this is a great time to grab a notepad and a pen and pause the video and jot things down as you go. These are also, a lot of these questions I feel like you might not have the answers to today, but they're kind of jumping off points for ideas to explore and places to take this journey for yourself. This how-to guide is in 3 sections. We're going to look at your spiritual ideology, your spiritual expression, and finally your application of your spirituality, how you show up in the world as a result of your spiritual practice. So we'll start with the ideology. The first thing that you really need to work out for yourself is, what do you know to be true? What do you really, truly, fundamentally, at your core, feel will always be true? And I like to split this into 3 categories: what is true about you, what is true about the world, and what is morally true to you. The reason for doing this is because we're trying to establish that bedrock. We're trying to build something reliable that no matter what goes wrong in our lives, we have something that is unchangeable. We are trying to establish this foundation, and by knowing what we truly believe ourselves to be true, we start that work. Secondly, the flip side of this, the second thing we need to work out is, what do we not know to be true? And where are the unanswered questions for you? For me, these are things like, is there a God? Is there an afterlife? These are the questions that my answer is honestly, I don't know. This is where a lot of your really big questions are going to live. And you might just want to make a note of if there are any of these questions that you really want to explore, or the questions that really bring up an emotion for you. I think any emotions that come up to the surface as you're writing down the things you don't know, they're a kind of trigger point of, oh, okay, I need to build some emotional resilience in this area, or I need to explore this a little bit further. The third part of this ideology section is identifying what I like to call your access points. What are the things in your life that inspire a sense of wonder or mystery or curiosity? So for me, I have nature as a massive access point for a sense of spirituality for me. The example I like to give is when I look at the moon, I know scientifically what it is, I know that it's a rock, I know all of that stuff about it, but there is this sense within me that there is something really special about the moon, and I feel this kind of sense of connection to it. Even though my rational ideology tells me that that's, it's something that I'm imagining, it's something that I'm putting onto it, that's what I'm looking to tap into. I'm looking to tap into those feelings of connection and that intangible relationship between things. That is my spirituality. So for me, the moon is a big access point, and lots of parts of nature are a big access point. Another example is music. Are you someone who, when you listen to music, it really moves you in a way that is beyond what can be attributed to, just sound waves or vibrations? These things that move you, whether that's because they are awe-inspiring or because they give you a sense of joy and wonder, or maybe it's some of your I don't know questions. What makes you really curious? Where does the mystery lie in the world for you? These are your access points to your spirituality. And these are the things that will help us when we get into step 2, which is all about our spiritual practice, to know what kind of direction we should take it in. The fourth thing in your ideology section is goal setting. What do you want to be the goal of your spirituality? Do you want it to be a source of hope? Do you want it to be a source of purpose and meaning? Do you just want to have a way of feeding your spirit? Have you got a particular thing that you want to feel more connected to? I knew I wanted to feel more connected to nature. Just write down some goals and feelings that you would like to have. So these are your kind of compass to see if you are going in the direction you want to be going in with your spirituality. And finally, for this section, what texts are you going to explore in order to think and learn more about your spirituality? I'm definitely going to make a video in the future about what these were for me. They are things like the poetry of Mary Oliver. They might be holy books and the texts of religions. They might be folk tales, or you might even have, a fictional story like the morality in Lord of the Rings. What are your kind of guiding texts? And these are kind of in 2 camps. What are things that you already know you like and already feel connection with? But they are also things that, what am I interested in? Do I want to have a look at Buddhism? Do I want to have a look at Islam or Christianity? Do I want to explore the practices of Wicca? Whatever it is, what texts have other humans written that could inform your spiritual practice? Also here, I am very much a cherry picker. I'm a massive advocate of cherry picking. Back to this point about truth, this needs to be something that holds true for you. It's always going to be personal to you. This is something that is so unique to you. What you build for your spirituality is going to be unique to you. So if you take something from here and something from there, go for it. I think we get into muddy waters when our spirituality becomes separate from who we are and what we really believe. So ground it in what you really believe, take the bits that you really like and interpret everything your way. Okay, so now we've started to establish our spiritual worldview, we can start to look at our spiritual expression and application of that spirituality. I like to see the ideology worldview section as kind of inputs. What texts am I reading? What am I thinking? What's going on in here? And these next two sections are about output. How am I going to practice my spirituality, and how does that mean I'm going to show up in the world? So we'll start with the practice, the spiritual expression. This is how do you build your spirituality into your life. This could be things like rituals and ceremonies that you borrow from a religion or you build. This could be things like holidays and festivals that you like to celebrate. What were my access points? Did I feel really connected to nature? Did I feel really connected to music? How can I incorporate those into my life in ways that feel meaningful to me? And the final thing that I want to encourage you to do is to express your spirituality creatively. Can I journal about my spirituality? Am I going to write poetry about it? Am I going to draw pictures about it? All of this is about how you start to output your spirituality to the world, and it starts this dialogue between what you think and what you do. And having a kind of physical real world practice helps you to embody and embed that spirituality in your daily life. So for example here, my personal spiritual practice is I like to follow the Wheel of the Year. This is an idea that I have borrowed from paganism, but it's basically a way of celebrating 8 points in the seasonal year. So my personal expression of my spirituality is at each of these 8 festivals. I like to read seasonal stories and folk tales. I like to think about what are the themes that I'm seeing in nature and connect them to my own life. I like to do journaling exercises around the themes of each seasonal holiday and think about where I'm at in life. And I also like to go for walks and just see what's happening in the world around me. And I have a spiritual practice of observance. I like to observe things and watch things and notice things. And finally, I like to create around my spirituality. I like to take photos of the seasonal changes. I like to write about it. Over the last year, I made a podcast series where I thought really deeply about different parts of my spirituality and how it connected to different religious beliefs. And the creative part of it has really helped me to process and express things that I don't think would have come up without that creative element as well. So the spiritual practice part, I think, is a really fun part. It kind of really embeds this into your daily or parts of your daily life. I would say if this is something that is drawing a blank for you, you're like, whoa, this is way too much. I'm going to have a ritual. I'm going to have a ceremony. Like, what are you talking about? This is, I think, where you can go back to your texts, and I would just basically try and do some reading around different rituals and different practices and kind of see if anything resonates with you and if there is anything that you fancy having a go at. Okay, finally, we are on to our last step, which is application of our spiritual beliefs. This is very much an ongoing process, and I think for me, I spent a long time in the first couple of stages before I really started to externalize my spiritual practice. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I believed and practicing it myself before I moved on to letting it change the way I act. I feel like this is kind of an inevitable thing. If you invest in your spirituality, you are likely to find yourself wanting to shift in certain ways. But these are just a few questions to start thinking about how your spirituality applies in the real world. First is, how do you want to show up in the world? Who do you want to be? How do you want to treat other people? How does your spirituality inform that? The second is, knowing what you know to be true, what does that truth demand of you? You might have heard the concept of alignment. This is about aligning your values with how you act. And the more you invest in your spiritual beliefs and your spiritual practice, the more you'll know these values and the more you'll be able to work out how you should act in accordance with them. And finally, how will you approach things with a sense of curiosity and wonder? We kind of have our spiritual practice and we have the way we treat people. How will you look at the world every day differently as a result of your spiritual practice? And I'm sure these are questions that you might not have the answer to yet, but they are definitely worth thinking about as you explore this journey further. So that is my kickstart guide to exploring your spirituality as someone who doesn't believe in anything. I really hope you found this useful. Please let me know if you did. If there are any specific topics in this video that you would like me to make a video about and delve into further, I would love to know what those are and make something for you guys, so please let me know. This journey has been a source of so much beauty and joy in my life, and it's something that I have not had to sacrifice my core rationality to achieve. And also, I think a lot of the time when atheists talk about spirituality, we talk about it in terms that are quite capitalist. You hear lots of the tech bros talking about mindfulness and meditation, but in this kind of CEO-coded, well, this will make you more productive way. And that approach feels kind of sterile to me. I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. So I'm hoping this can offer an alternative direction to take things in if you are craving a spiritual dimension in your life. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in learning more about the Wheel of the Year, my video on it is here, and I will be back with more content on this topic and others soon. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.